So I guess we will do a call the meeting of the Human Services Background Study Eligibility Task Force to order. Mr. Vogel, do you know by just your math whether we have a quorum at this time?
Mr. Chair, informally, it looks like 12 members, but with a group this large, I think a formal roll call might be a better idea.
Agreed. Just didn't want to do it too early. So why don't you, could you please do the formal roll call, Mr. Vogel?
Certainly, Mr. Chair, and I will keep track of members as they come in after this. Ms. Basham? Ms. Basham? Senator Champion? Senator Champion? Ms. Dawson? Ms. Dawson? Mr. Esme? Mr. Esme? Ms. Evans?
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Geffen?
Here.
Mr. Hanson?
Here.
Ms. Huntley?
Good morning, present.
Thank you. Mr. Urban? Mr. Urban? Ms. Kaser?
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Kammer?
Present.
Lieutenant Knotts?
Present.
Thank you. Judge Kulik? Judge Kulik? Senator Matthews? Senator Matthews? Ms. Mattson?
Present.
Representative Moeller?
Present.
Inspector General Modi? Inspector General Modi? Mr. Page?
Present.
Representative Robbins?
Present.
And I apologize, I skipped you, Ms. Robertus. Ms. Robertus. Mr. Sandoval. Mr. Sandoval. Judge Satterback. Judge Satterback. Mr. Tatum. Mr. Tatum. I'm batting 1,000 today, Ms. Sherlock. Ms. Sherlock. What's alphabetical order? And Ms. Williamson.
Present.
Thank you, Ms. Williamson. All right, Mr. Chair, 12 of the 25 members are present. We're one shy of quorum, but I'll let you know if somebody else comes in.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vogel. So at this time, we will not move to adopt any previous meeting minutes. We're going to wait and see if we can achieve quorum. For today, our plan is a little bit open, and we're going to have a guest speaker coming in. I think as Ms. Vice Chair Evans had identified. We had originally scheduled for 10:30, but we're going to try to move it up to 10:15. One of the things we're going to do is check in with some of the subcommittees. What we're noticing is a lot of work being done in the subcommittees right now, which is going to lead, I think, to a discussion about this bigger meeting. And currently we're meeting every 2 weeks. And one of the issues that has sort of come up is, especially for the summer and really just for about 2 months, would it be better to move this meeting to every month? I believe the legislative requirement is a monthly meeting, and obviously our numbers are a little bit down as life and summer in Minnesota would almost require. So since the idea was that if the work being done in the subcommittees is where, again, most of the work is being done right now, and we're using the bigger meeting to sort of report back on what the subcommittees are doing, might make sense for the near future to do monthly meetings. And I'm in favor of that because I think we might increase our attendance if we do monthly. And I think it makes sense because we don't always have that much to report at the monthly. But I certainly want to open it up to discussion to the task force as a whole. Anybody have any thoughts, concerns, in favor, against, if we pursue that route? Ms. Kaser, please.
I would be in favor of that change of moving to a monthly meeting once a month for the time being.
Yeah, and it would, I think, the proposal would be 2 months. So we would go, the next one would be August 12th and then September something. And then we would, as we sort of ramp up towards the end and start moving towards writing and resolutions, going back to every 2 weeks as necessary. Ms. Huntley, please.
Thank you. I would like to show my support for that as well. I think giving people the space to put their time and energy into the subcommittees where, as you mentioned, the work is really being done at this point in time would be in everybody's best interest. So I think that's a great idea.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. Vice Chair Evans.
I think the conversation, John, was that we would do one in July, one in August, and then resume twice in September. We need to get it written in September, August, or September, October, and be ready. So it's actually one in July, one in August, and then resume in September. Correct, Will?
That was my recollection as well.
Yep.
As was mine, Ms. Evans.
And that's my recollection too. And I apologize for misspeaking. That exactly right. And this can be something flexible too, that if we, decide to change it later, we can, but agreed, it would be one meeting July, one meeting August, and then resuming. With that said, and I appreciate people's support, is there anybody who has a concern at all that this is not a good idea? Okay, I think we're going to do that. And I think so moving forward, this will give people a little bit of time and a little more flexibility with their time to work with subcommittees, a little more flexibility with their time throughout the summer, especially on Fridays. Mr. Vogel, if you could sort of update all of the documents and invites to reflect that, that'd be appreciated.
Will do, Mr. Chair. And I'd also like to note that Ms. Sherlock is now present, so we have a quorum.
Oh, good morning, Ms. Sherlock. Good to see you.
Morning, sorry I'm late.
Just glad you're here. So now that we have quorum, Mr. Vogel has posted copies of the June 3rd and June 24th meeting minutes on the task force website. And at this point, we're just going to open up and ask if anybody has any corrections, modifications, or any concerns regarding those meeting minutes. Okay, seeing no hands raised and assuming that means there are no objections, those meeting minutes are now approved. And so I know that Ms. Dawson isn't here today, so I don't know if we can get any update out of the remedies subcommittee. I can give, I think, just a brief update regarding disqualifications. Disqualifications has been working diligently on the list of disqualifying factors, and we had been doing a deep dive into essentially the drug offenses and some of the issues that we're addressing when we look at the drug offenses is, are all drug offenses crimes of property or person, and having a kind of a robust discussion about the difference between sales offenses and possession offenses, having a discussion about what seems to be really sometimes very small amounts of drugs leading to the higher level offenses, and discussing where the line sort of is, so to speak, for where these matters are crimes of addiction or other types of crimes that might be more serious, and specifically the higher level, well, I guess it's lower degree but higher level sales offenses, and how we look at that in terms of whether or not that's a safety issue. If somebody has 5 years of life without addiction and they're doing well, should they have a 15-year disqualification? Should there be a 15-year disqualification? So that's a lot of what we're talking about. We are bringing in the near future people who have some understanding of the science behind addiction and relapse, and when is it looking like somebody has, and I'm using terrible language, I'm sure, and I'll have Ms. Evans correct me on any of this, but like sort of kind of kicked it and are doing well, where we don't have as great of concerns for relapse and reoffending in a way that could impact individual safety. And one of the hard parts, of course, is how do you create a system that looks at those issues, without going through a protracted set aside. I don't think we have answers to all these things, but that's really where we're at in the deep dive right now. Ms. Evans or others in disqualification, do you think that's a fair assessment, or do you have anything to kind of add to that I missed? Okay, so I think it's a hard discussion because they're, you know, the way the drug laws are written can be confusing and difficult. And, you know, at this point, a first degree sales is the same as a fifth degree possession in terms of disqualification. And I think that the disqualification subcommittee agrees that that's not right. But how do we, what recommendation comes out of that yet is yet to be determined. Is Mr. Cameron here today? I didn't hear his name.
I am here.
Hey, good to see you and hear you. Well, I don't see you, but I do hear you. Is there anything that, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, Professor, but is there anything you want to add regarding the work of the data analysis subcommittee?
No, we only had 2 of us this last time around, so we'll be meeting here next week, and we will keep working through the data at our next meeting. So no report this time around.
Thank you so much. And I would remind all of the individuals in the task force, and I would extend this even to our community participants, that if there are issues and questions about data that we'd like to have analyzed, those should be properly directed to Professor Cameron and his data analysis subcommittee. That's open to all of us. If we have questions, that's the group that can really help us sort of analyze that data. Thank you so much, Mr. Cameron. Ms. Chair Williamson, is there anything from the data subcommittee? I know you guys have pulled back a little bit, but is there anything to report from your subcommittee?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just getting on record that the most recent data requests have been formally submitted on behalf of the data subcommittee. And yes, we have moved to monthly meetings and look forward for any additional requests so that we can be sure to get the verbiage and have them formally submitted.
Thank you so much, Chair Williamson. And I would reiterate that if there's data from the community and data from other individuals that we want, Chair Williamson is the person we want to direct those to sooner rather than later, because obviously we are not at a point where we're gathering huge amounts of data, but if there are little pieces, Chair Williamson has been diligent and fantastic getting that data for us, along with the department. And I you know, is there anybody from Remedies that felt comfortable expressing any update? I know, again, Ms. Dawson's not present, but anybody from Remedies have anything to add that is of significance?
Just that we're looking at POE and looking at some data from before. And Roy, have we looked at any new data with POE? That's what we're going to do, right?
Correct.
Yep. So we're looking at POE and preponderance of the evidence and any recommendations that we can make with that. That's what we're working on right now. So.
Thank you. Thank you for the update. And I would say with this month off of the big groups, the expectation, and this goes obviously for me as well, is that at the next full task force meeting, each of the subcommittees should provide a pretty robust update and presentation on what it's been doing and where it is and kind of where it's going. I think we'll have meetings of the chairs of the subcommittees in the future, but want to make sure that everybody knows. I think the next meeting would be a great one to make sure everybody attends, because I think there's going to be a lot of stuff that we can share. Is there any? We do have our speaker. I saw him pop up for a second. Is there any issues regarding what we've already spoken about today that we should discuss before we move to our speaker? Okay, Ms. Evans, do you want to introduce Dewan?
I can.
Please.
So I was at another thing that I'm super passionate about is pardon board and pardon board reform. And so I was at the last pardon board meeting, and so was John. And I heard Dewan to testify in front of the pardon board, and it was pretty crushing for me that he wasn't granted his pardon. And so being the person that I am, I chased him outside and talked to him and his family. And so I think that because of the way that our system is set up, like he was just a perfect person to come speak to us about how his the mistakes that he's made in his past, that he's now as an older person gotten past, are impacting him. And also a perfect person. I'll talk to him later about, like, as we're working towards pardon board reform, like he just is, his story is just a perfect one for us to hear, like boots on the ground, the impact. And so I was very grateful, Dwan, for you to come and share with us your experience and anything that I can do going forward to help at the pardon board. And you are the reason that we're here doing this work. And so thank you to you and your family for fighting the good fight. So thanks for being here.
What you guys are doing. For myself and for people that are in this situation, truly trying to change their lives around. Yeah.
I want to just start out, Dewan, by saying that this is a public meeting. It is being recorded and is available to the public. You are under obviously no obligation to say things here. Your name at this point is just Dewan. You don't need to use your last name. You don't need to have any identifying information, but I think it's important at least that you know that this is public. People will know that you like AC/DC. I don't know if you're comfortable with everybody knowing your rock and roll habits, but I just want to make sure you're okay with that part of this process.
Good.
I don't know if it was for everybody, but you cut out on me a little bit. I do want to make sure we get just something recorded that says you're okay with the public nature of this.
Yes, I'm okay with it.
Okay, thank you so much. You and I had an opportunity to chat just for a few minutes today. And I just thought if you're okay with it, we just talk a little bit about your life and what you've been going through and all the neat things and some of the obstacles.
What would you like me to start?
Why don't you just tell us a little bit about, you were telling me about the passion that you have for your work. Why don't you tell me about your job and how you got into it?
Okay, yeah. So I'm currently a dental assistant. I've been doing this for about 10 years now. I really enjoy it. Out of high school, when you're in 12th grade, you're looking for careers and you're going into college and you're taking all these classes. And at that time, I didn't really have any guidance or know what I wanted to do. But I did have braces at the time. And so my orthodontist, the assistant there, recommended assisting the dental field. And so I looked into it and I just kind of gained a passion for it, and I really enjoy it. And yeah, I love it.
What, and if you wanted to expand your role in dentistry recently?
Yeah. So throughout the years, so Minnesota, and I know it's kind of different in other states, but Minnesota, you have to have a license to be a dental assistant. And so I took the regular, or the required courses at MCTC. So that's where I graduated from in 2013. And then, just being myself, I know I always want to do more. And so with this job, or what this field, you can kind of do expanded functions, which allows you to take extra courses at the U of M, at the U, and kind of do, so I can do a little bit more than a regular dental assistant can. And that just goes to kind of show, how dedicated I am and how much I actually enjoy doing what I do. So yeah, in 2017, I did that. I graduated with my license in 2013. And I took the restorative functions class at the U of M and graduated from that in 2017, which is like an 80-hour extra credit course. I had to pay for it out of pocket, about $3,000. But yeah, it just shows my passion for this field.
I know at some point you talked about being something that I didn't even know existed called like, I believe you said it was like a dental therapist.
Yeah, yeah. So
What's
that
that?
was, yeah. So a dental therapist is, it's like a mid-level provider. So it's not necessarily a dentist, and we compare it to a nurse practitioner in the dental field. So you can do certain levels of dentistry that a dental hygienist can't do. And it was really created for to serve underserved communities or rural areas. It started in Minnesota. I think it's in Alaska, Arizona, and a couple other states. But yeah, it's just to get dental services out to, like I said, the underserved communities where there's not a lot of dentists, or the rural areas as well where there aren't a lot of dentists. You would have to work in a collaborative agreement with the dentist, but you would be able to still practice dentistry. So take out, do fillings and pull teeth to a certain degree. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass out halfway through this for this call. What and have you been successful in becoming a dental therapist?
I have not. And that's due to the 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 charge on my on my record there, the misdemeanor domestic assault. Yeah.
So, you have a misdemeanor domestic assault. When did that occur?
It happened in 2013, August 2013, but I was convicted in April of 2014.
And was it a conviction? Did you go to a jury trial? Did you take a plea agreement? What happened?
So it started off as a felony charge, domestic assault by strangulation. And I kept working with talking to my attorney, and they offered me a gross misdemeanor, and I wasn't trying to take that. And we got it down to a misdemeanor. But at the same time, concurrently that this is going on, I was just finishing up my dental assisting license. So being 23 years old at the time, I didn't know if this would affect, my my license, or the restrictions that it would place. And basically the ultimatum, my choices were to take it all the way to trial, or accept the misdemeanor and wait the probationary period, take the lesser of the consequences, because my attorney told me, if you want to, because I was willing to fight it to the end, but the attorney told me, if you go to trial and you lose, now you're going to get charged with the felony, and it's going to be worse. I can't hear you.
Sorry, we're even now, right?
Yeah.
So, how exactly did it interfere? Because you're licensed as a dental assistant, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then when you wanted to become a dental therapist, can you explain how it got in the way now as opposed to when you wanted to become a dental assistant?
So as a dental assistant, you're not a provider of direct patient care. But which doesn't, I guess I'm working underneath the dentist. I'm underneath their license. I'm working under their license, which I'm still able to work with patients on my own because the dentist isn't always in the room, right? It's kind of, you have to look into it a little bit, and then as a dental hygienist, I guess you're considered a provider, healthcare provider, sort of like a nurse is kind of how I would put that.
And were you able to, I mean, I assume that there's some schooling that goes into becoming a dental therapist. Did you try to go to school to become a dental therapist?
Yep. So in order for me, the route I'm taking, there's two different routes. You could either go to the U of M, or you can go to Metro State, which I'm going the Metro State route, which was become an assistant, and then you become a dental hygienist, and then do that for 2 years, and then you apply to Metro State's advanced dental therapist program. But I can't even become a dental hygienist because I have to go through the board of the Department of Human Services. Yeah.
So it's your understanding you're disqualified to become a dental hygienist through the Department of Human Services?
Currently, yes. If I was to apply and the background check was to come, I would be disqualified for that 7-year waiting period.
And have you worked as a dental assistant from 2013 till now?
Correct. I've maintained my license and kept my license current and never had any, any judgments or any write-ups or anything like that. Yes.
I mean, we've been talking in this task force for the last time about the laws that impact individuals. Some of us have some lived experience, but it's really important for us to hear from people that are living this. How has this impacted you? Has it been a frustrating process? Do you think it's fair?
It's beyond frustrating. I made a mistake and I regret that, and I can't go back and change what I did. But now that it's been 10 years, a decade, a third of my life, I've grown up and matured, and now I have a young son who's 2. But yeah, it definitely weighs a ton on people that are really trying to do things in life and get further places. Like, I walk around every day or I go to work every day and I just feel like I'm not good enough, but I know I'm good enough. But on paper, I'm judged as this person or this abuser, and then you start to doubt yourself and you get, depression comes and a little bit of, not anger, but you get frustrated with this, how things are. And then the waiting period, and then, you go to the pardon, and I mean, everything looks good on paper, and they talk about your petty misdemeanor traffic and deny the rest of your, that's that. I wanted to cry, but I honestly expected that I expected that. Sadly enough.
If you were to change things, what would you see as a good change to the system?
Change things. I mean, they as far, okay. Can you kind of just elaborate that one for me? It
was a terrible question. Yeah, I mean, my goal is just to kind of think about, like, if what would have been. You talk about what's frustrating. I mean, and in a system where we want to make sure that people who are vulnerable are protected.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't really have a question here that I can even articulate, but maybe I'll even open this up to others. But I mean, would you think there was a time that you posed a risk of harm to people, or do you feel like that was never the case?
Pose a risk to harm. I believe I made a mistake at that time of my life. And then I guess I posed a risk to the harm of the victim. But myself as a person, I haven't had any same or similar offenses since then. All of my bosses, first of all, I work with all females in the dental field. You don't see a lot of men or black men. Never seen a black assistant. We could just start there in the dental field. So that comes as a surprise every day to people. And then, I have patients writing reviews saying, oh, he's great, he's gentle. I worked at a pediatric office. I worked with kids. Even my employers, I work with doctors. They trust me enough to work on their family members. And I've been maintaining my license for 10 years. I'm not a threat. I know I'm not a threat. I made a mistake, a grave mistake, which I regret, but I know I'm not a threat to society, to public. I'm not, no.
I was not implying at all that you ever were. I just wanted to open that discussion up.
Yeah.
In terms of, I didn't understand this. So a dental hygienist is different from a dental assistant.
Yep.
And you can't become a dental hygienist either?
Not until, my 7-year disqualification period will be up next April. So then I can apply to dental. So I can't even apply to the school because they're going to run the background check right away and deny me. So when that 7-year, from what I recall, I talked to somebody at the Department of Human Services on Wednesday. I called and asked her, once that 7-year to date is up and they run the background check, am I going to be disqualified? And she said no. So now after 7 years, I guess, from what she said and what I've read on the statutes in Minnesota, I should be not disqualified after that 7-year period, which would end April of 2023.
What's the difference between a dental assistant and a dental hygienist?
There's really not too much of it.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit more schooling that a dental hygienist does, but every day people, and you, like you said, you don't know, or a lot of people don't know the difference when they come in. Well, either they ask me, am I the doctor? And I have to regret, say, no, I wish I was. And then they go, are you the hygienist? And then I shake my head and I just like, no, I'm the assistant. So assistant, we're more one-on-one with the doctor. Hygienist is more alone. They're the one that cleans your teeth, and then the doctor comes in and does the exam.
I apologize. That's my ignorance of trying to learn.
No, it's
Miss Evans, do you have anything that you want to add? Because I think you know Duan real well, and I want to make sure we open it up to you and then maybe others.
Yep. So the one thing that I think you're getting to a really good point, right? You're in the dentist chair, and what's the difference, right?
Right.
Like the risk of, in this particular arena, right, the risk of harm to the person cleaning your teeth compared to the person that's helping take pictures, like when we're talking about risk of harm, what's the difference? And I'm not asking you a question, Duan. I'm just like, to this group of people to say, like, what is the difference for us to really be thinking about that? And then the other thing that I would just like to point out is like his 7 years, is coming up April 23rd. He could start school and like his date is coming, but the school won't let him start because clinicals are going to start, and that's a big deal. Like, he's not going to be able to start school now until the next
fall.
Yep, the next semester or whatever, the next year. And like, why are we creating barriers that don't need to be barriers? And the other thing, and we don't need to take any more time up of Duan's. I see that Nicole has her hand up, and I want to get to other questions or whatever, but like, the fact that judges, I feel like, do these downward departures or, stay of adjudication, stay of impositions, like they do these with the intention of not having it create these barriers that then DHS is creating on the back end, where he's still having these problems with employment all the way to 7 years later. And so I just would encourage us, like, we don't need to do it right now, but to have this conversation about it. So thank you. Nicole, did you have a question?
Yeah. We're talking about what's the difference for the positions, but I'm assuming there's a difference in how much money you can make. So, there's career progression and opportunity to make more money with these different positions and elevate your role, no matter what we call it. And if we don't understand it, there's an impact to you. That's my assumption.
Yeah. Yep. You're exactly right. So this is the best way, Nicole, and for everybody else is, so dental assistants would be like a nursing assistant. And then you have your nurses, which would be like a hygienist. And then you have your nurse practitioners, which would be a dental therapist. And then you have your doctors, which would be a dentist, right? That's like that's how I could best describe that. That's how that is. And then, like you said, the financial growth, and yes. Yeah. And like I said, I've already done all the prerequisites for the, so I'm ready to go. I just have to apply. But yeah, I hope I answered that.
Yeah, you're, I think, clearly in that holding pattern.
Yeah.
And I think Ms. Matson makes a really good point that we're talking about no change, but there is a significant change in how it impacts your life, your growth. And I think when people are passionate about something, they always want to see what's the next step, what's the next thing that I can do. And you are not able to achieve that because of background study issues. Is that fair to say, Duan?
Yes.
And so what piece of this is really protecting community, and it's about risk of harm? And what piece of this is about like this continued punishment that we that we're putting people through. And that is, you know, what I would ask us as a group. I see that Mr. Page has his hand up.
Thank you. And I apologize because I had to bounce out for just a moment there. And I apologize if this has been asked already. But DeJuan, I'm wondering how much of this process for you has been done on paper and filling out applications, and how much is done person to person? I just wonder because we've had a number of people come before the committee or the task force and tell us about their story and, you know, provide very compelling cases for why they should be able to do work. And I worry that a lot of the decisions that are made are based on just paperwork that is submitted through bureaucracies, of which I am one, so I understand the reason for those. But I'm curious about your experience with that and what others might think about more person-to-person pieces to the decision-making tree.
Oh, okay. So when you say how much was done on paper, what meaning? Can you explain that part a little bit, and then person to person?
And I guess my question is, maybe you haven't gone through the process if you know that you are not eligible to become licensed for any of these positions. But I'm just curious about the paperwork that is done in applying for a job, and then that paperwork being sent to the Department of Human Services, for example. And the fact, or I think it's a fact, I'm not certain, but that there is no person necessarily from the final decision maker, maybe with the Department of Human Services, no in-person contact with that person and the applicant.
Yeah. So no, so when I apply for jobs, and I hope this answers that, but when I apply for these positions, majority of them are private practice offices. And so I don't necessarily know if they do the background checks. They just want to know if you have your dental assisting license. But there was one employer who I had a recommendation from because she's just an outstanding doctor, and she did a background check, and she, looked it up, and she asked me, what is this? And kind of, it was embarrassing, to actually have to explain that to her, what was going on, but it was also an eye opener. And she's the one that pushed me to, she told me about the pardon because I didn't know about the pardon until then. But with the Department of Human Services, I know my first job in 2013, I tried to apply for was at Union Mission Gospel. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. But yeah, and they ran the background check, and they basically didn't hire me, or they temporarily hired me until the background study came back, and then I was denied the job. But just from me knowing, they're like health partners, they would run a background check. I wouldn't even attempt to apply there. Am I kind of answering? Or am I just?
It's helpful, and it's more a question to get this group thinking as well about the processes that we use. And there may be other folks that are going through this process that might be able to answer differently because they've had a different experience than you, but that does really help. That is really helpful in answering my question. Thank you.
Okay.
And I think, Mr. Page, it's an ongoing discussion that we've had, like, how do we balance that personal analysis versus needing to get it done in a timely manner. I think it's a huge issue for us in coming up with a fair thing that's still efficient. Ms. Sherlock, do you have a question for DeJuan?
I do. I just first want to say, DeJuan, thanks for coming today and sharing your story. I guess this is me being ignorant about this pardon process. It sounds like you heard about it yourself. You went through the process. You were denied. Is that kind of a one and done situation, or can you apply again for a pardon?
From what I read, you have to have, I can apply again, but I have to have 2 of the 3 board members approve for me to, they have to say it's okay for me to reapply. I believe that's how it works. I think, what's her name? Amanda was her name, the one that introduced me. I think she might know a little bit, but I think that's what that is.
Yep, and it sounds like April 2023 is going to be here sooner than any of that's going to happen. If your 7 years is going to, and so I don't know that you're going to need all that.
And I'm sorry, is that 7 years to be the dental, to go forward for a dental hygienist or for the dental therapist?
That's so, yeah, it would be either or. I'm just taking a kind of longer route, but it's to become a dental hygienist and then elevate from there to become a dental therapist.
Okay.
Yeah. So a dental assistant, they say it's not a provider. So like a nursing assistant, you're not a provider, but then a nurse, you are a provider. Mm-hmm. And like a hygienist, you are a provider.
So can you talk a little bit about, maybe, April will probably be here quicker than any of us think, but this has been going on for a long time. Can you talk at all about how this timing has, if it has impacted your hope or your commitment or your ambition to move forward? Can you talk at all about that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, once, I was just telling, I think I was telling you guys earlier, I just called the Department of Human Services and found out about that disqualification this week. And that was after the Board of Pardons. So after I got denied, I was still looking for ways to, keep moving forward. I could have broke down and been mad, and, I got 2 out of 3 votes. That should be more than enough, but it just drives me to, to prove that, I can do it and it can be done. And it takes a long time, but it can be done. It's very frustrating. I've been through hoops and loops, and yeah. Does that answer your question?
It did. I feel like somebody would really have to have the wherewithal or the right advice to know all these things, to know all these processes that you can attempt to rectify the situation, and how frustrating. And I wonder how many people just give up at some point, the first no they get, and give up, and what we can do, and thinking about how we set these up, making recommendations about how long these DQs should last, and what are the real life implications of that for people.
Yep. According to our data, Ms. Sherlock, 60% of people give up after the first no on a set aside.
Thank you.
Wow.
Good luck to you in your future endeavors.
Oh yeah, you'll see me.
I don't want to sit in any dental seat, but I'd be happy to be sitting in yours.
Oh yeah. Thank you.
Duan, Miss Selstrom's got a question as well.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Hi, Duan. I just want to say thank you for sharing your story, but then also just to clarify, has there been more than one or just one like set aside opportunity for you, or has it just been like when you've been disqualified, you've just moved on to trying a different opportunity? Can you clarify that for me?
Yeah, as far as jobs.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's only been that one time I got disqualified. And like I said, it's the dental field is really, it's different than like the nursing or it's like its own separate healthcare field, and I'm amazed how because I've been a temp, so I've been to multiple, probably over 25 different dental offices, and I've been employed probably at least by over 8 different dental offices over my 10 years that I've been doing this, and nobody's ever said nothing to me. But it's more just the schooling. When I applied to the program, I got disqualified. That would be the only other time, I got a set aside, if that's what you mean, right?
Yeah, I just was clarifying if it was just that one situation for you right now.
Yes, just that one Union Mission Gospel job.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions for Duan? We want to certainly be respectful of his time, but this is just wonderful for us, Duan, to hear actual.
Oh, I got all the time.
Like,
I'm free.
Anybody else? Well, Duan, I want to say a couple things, and this is me talking, not the chair or anybody else. I think that, whatever you want to do in terms of this dental therapist, you're going to do. And it's not an if, it's just a win. And I think it's been clear that you have a passion for this and an indomitable spirit that's going to bring you through. Personally, I'm sorry it's been such a struggle to do. It seems like you have a lot to offer a lot of other people. You've chosen to help calm people like myself that might not be real comfortable in that dentist chair. So I want to thank you for the work you've done and certainly being open enough to talk to us today in a public forum about things that sometimes don't feel fun to talk about.
Yeah, no problem.
With that, does anybody else have anything left for Duan before we let him go enjoy his Friday? Well, with that, Duan, thank you so much. Again, I think as Ms. Evans had said, you're the reason we do this, and it's true. We're all signed on for this to help people like you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for doing things like this. I just, wish more people could, find out about, make things. It's so easy or so hard to navigate through this whole judicial system. Getting told no, it can break you down. It really can break you down mentally and your spirit, and you just gotta have that determination. And I'm determined, so we need more resources out there, and I'm glad you guys are doing what you're doing. I really do.
We appreciate it. Thanks so much, Duan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Bye.
I think there are a lot of issues that Duan raises, and one of them that strikes me is, and maybe this is going off what Mr. Alexa too, is there's so many. If you think about it, he's talking about background checks, which is not a background study, then background studies, disqualification in employment, disqualification in education, then ideas of pardons, expungements, taking a plea when you may not have felt that you were needed. Just so many pieces to it. The fact that the disqualification period doesn't start until after you're off probation, which essentially has given him a 10-year disqualification. Man, that was a lot. So are there any ideas or thoughts people have as we kind of decompress? We don't have anything else on the calendar today, so we can decompress on this, or we can decompress on our own.
Yep. So my one question, because that was just a little tricky for me. So is that a permanent for 7 years? How?
Okay. I mean, to some degree, I don't know if he knows. I did look him up today, and he has a misdemeanor conviction, which should be a 7-year disqualification. It sounds like he confirmed that. Although, when you contact DHS, in my experience, they don't just look you up and say, "Hey, you have a 7-year." But I think as I understood, what he was identifying was that they did verify that 7-year disqualification is the misdemeanor disqualification.
And so I don't understand how it's possible for a school to not allow him to start school with just because he can get a set aside. It's not like it's not, I'm going to use this made up word, set asideable. Like, I don't understand how they can not let him start school because of it.
I think they can do whatever they want because, and they may not understand the set aside process. They might have a policy that says we're not going to take your money, or we're not going to go through this unless you pass a background study. Just like an employer doesn't just because you can get a set aside doesn't mean an employer has to take it. So if you apply for a job and you're disqualified, you say, well, I can get a set aside. The employer can say, we we don't care. We don't want it.
Sounds like he needs a lawyer, John, to talk to the school.
Does.
Mhm.
And
'Cause
I will
that
be,
doesn't sound fair to me that they can just say,
I
like,
think there's a lot of stuff out there that I think he needs some help with, because I think there are some solutions. And I think Ms. Sahlstrom was sort of hitting on it, like what has been the history of set asides, which I think goes to what Ms. Sherlick said. How does anybody know what a set aside is, and how do they know when it works, when it doesn't? I mean, there's so many pieces here, and truthfully, I don't know how he stayed so strong. I would have bailed. I would have been doing something else.
yep, it
What
leads
about-
to relapse. That's for
And
sure. A lot.
What about the inequities if you don't speak English? If you're a new American? I mean, how can you navigate the system then?
You don't. I mean, it's a really hard thing, and we've litigated this with the department, and I'm not throwing the department under the bus on this, but like, how can, if your set aside is based 100% on a written submission, if you're not good at writing, I mean, it kind of becomes a little bit of a writing competition, which is really unfair. That's a great point. And
The other factor that we have to keep lifting up is that this is a workforce solution. We have a workforce crisis in healthcare in particular, and this is a potential solution.
And the idea that, and I think it was really intelligent was what Ms. Evans said, was that this isn't designed as a punishment statute. This isn't punitive. This is a public safety issue. And it's a little hard to understand the public safety issue when you have someone who's been licensed by an entity, who works successfully for 10 years as a dental assistant, and then to move up one notch, then it becomes this emergency public safety issue where, I mean, remember the background study, a disqualification means an employer cannot hire them, as opposed to a background check where they get to do the analysis and say, you know, I know Duan, and he's a really good guy. I want to keep him. I want to hire him, even though I know about this thing that happened 10 years ago. I agree 100%, Ms. Matson. And I want to, Representative Moeller has her hand up, and I want to make sure we get to her. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I was just thinking about, you know, how complicated this is too, and sort of the need for people to have a navigator when they're either, you know, starting probation or done with probation, or somebody that, because I mean, currently, like, their attorneys only know so much about collateral consequences, and for collateral consequences, their criminal attorneys don't have to like know all the details and be able to tell them all of the different potential outcomes. I assume for probation, it's going to be the same, but correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you're only going to know so much, and you're working with a lot of clients, and it just seems like, so I don't know where people go. Like, he just found out from somebody randomly that he could get, you know, apply for a pardon. And it's like, is there some sort of system that can be set up where people are referred to, you know, navigators or whatever to kind of help them figure out what are the different options for them? And I mean, that's maybe just a pie in the sky thing, and it would take a lot of resources, but it just seems like, you know, I don't necessarily think it's something for their initial attorney or for probation. It seems like there needs to be a whole other sort of resource for folks to go to.
Yeah, and one crime from 2013 is keeping him from upward mobility. It's not like it was a bunch of crimes, or yeah, it was a hard hearing to sit through. So
And Representative Moeller, I think in terms of attorneys, very few of them understand all these complicated pieces. And our clinic gets a lot of calls from attorneys that I think want to do good and just go, I don't know. They just don't know what to do. And we can provide probably 1% of 1% advice for those people. But I agree, there's this huge vacuum of and there's just not much out there for people to get some good. I mean, sometimes we talk to people and we tell them really bad news, and they say, thank you so much for explaining this to me. Even though it's bad, they're out of wondering, and they go, okay, I have a permanent disqualification. I can't pursue this career until the law changes, as opposed to writing letters and pursuing things that won't help. So thank you. Anybody else have any comments about, the many issues, and this goes to Representative Muller too. One of the questions I was going to ask and didn't was, did he understand when he accepted a plea, the impact, what were the collateral consequences, and what was the discussion regarding those collateral consequences? Because that's always something I want to know. Ms. Alstrom, please.
Yeah, so I just wanted to share too, like Ms. Evans had indicated with that, the court giving someone those, stay of imposition, stay of adjudication. I have that for a disqualifying charge from 2009, but it wasn't until I had 2 years clean in 2012 that I was actually convicted after like 4 felony charges were dropped to 1 gross misdemeanor charge. And, at the time, I really had no idea what my passion was going to become in the recovery field. And now, like with probation and my disqualification, like I'm at 15 years of not being able to help the population of people that I am most beneficial to. And like I'm lucky I'm going to school for my LADC, but I just registered for like one semester before my internship, and I had an instructor tell me that if I can't pass a background check to do these 50 hours of service with an entity to fulfill the obligation for this class, that I should drop the class and change my major at this point. And I just said, absolutely not. Like, I know for myself that, yes, it might be a waiting game. My opportunity for this disqualification to be off my record is not until May of 2024. And I know that willingly, but I have submitted and worked for 3 different entities and done set-asides. And I've worked somewhere, been promoted somewhere, and worked for the state even. And after 4 months, got a set-aside back that said I'm still disqualified, and I had to leave after a promotion because like you work for a state entity, they don't do what's called a variance, where they can kind of stand up and testify to the work you've already done and be willing to allow you to stay working there. And doing the thing that I found is absolutely the most fulfilling for me, and allowing to work with that population that needs me, honestly, to have that benefit of getting to hear my story. Like, I can't help people right now because in 2009, I committed a crime due to my addiction. So just wanted to quick throw that out there.
Thank you so much. And I think it is obviously an important issue that you're living through. And that, the LADC stuff is really difficult because I think it highlights the fact that this is not just a law about you, Ms. Selstrom, it's about who you can also help. And I believe that you are helping people. So there are a lot of pieces to it. Thank you for your testimony and your bravery to talk to us about it. I appreciate it. This is pretty heavy for a Friday. Anybody else have something they want to add? Again, we don't have anything else. We can be done, or we can continue to have thoughtful discussions.
I would just bring up the point that you made about, and I like, we're way off on a rabbit trail right now, but like, do they in court let people know about the collateral consequences and what that's going to look like for folks? Because I don't know when people are taking plea agreements that they talk very much about the the waiting periods and all of that stuff. And do they, Kelly?
Well, I was going to say what I meant by the collateral consequences, your attorney doesn't have to tell you that. It means that your attorney won't be found later as ineffective if they don't inform you of what the courts deemed collateral consequences. And so, like in the immigration context, it used to be considered whatever your immigration consequences were, that was considered a collateral consequence. And so if your attorney didn't know or didn't tell you about what those consequences might be, like deportation, that was okay. But the U.S. Supreme Court had a ruling several years ago that said, actually, that's more than a collateral consequence, your immigration consequences. So now, you know, your defense attorney will be ineffective if they're not informing you of, you know, these potential consequences. And so that's what I was saying, like, you know, there might be some defense attorneys who are looking into it and are, if they know one of their clients is doing X job or wants to do X job, they may try to call John's Clinic or someone and try to get more information. But technically, they don't really have to tell you. It's not going to make your plea later invalid. Your plea will still be voluntary, even if you say, well, I took the plea, but I didn't know I wouldn't be able to get licensed. They're going to say that's a collateral consequence. And there was no, you know, that doesn't impact the voluntariness of your plea or the effectiveness of your counsel.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I've thought about this a bunch of times in the past, like why it, not that it should affect like ineffective assistance of counsel or whatever, but that it should at least be part of it. Like they talk about that when you plead guilty, and I've done this a million times, but when you plead guilty, like they go over that list of stuff. You understand that if you plead guilty to this, that it could impact your citizenship. If you're not a, you know, they go over all of those things. And like, you know, should that be something that gets added to that like you understand that this could impact your ability to be employed later on. Like I feel like they don't cover it, and maybe they should, like how like employment and housing.
I think there are more than two types of lawyers, but there are kind of some lawyers that don't want to do that because they want to get the plea agreement in.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think there are other attorneys that are very mindful of making sure a client is making an informed decision, and are going to go that they're going to ask questions. What do you do for a living?
Yeah.
And ask questions about how it could impact. And then a lot of them don't know, but they reach out. But I mean, I think they're a great. Lucas would be a great attorney that does that kind of stuff. Lucas, do you see? Miss Dawson, I should say. Miss Dawson, do you see most, when you're putting pleas in, most people addressing collateral consequences the way you do?
No, I don't always. And I will, you know, and I will acknowledge, I mean, I talk to my clients and get their background and what they do for a living. And for the most part, my conversations about the collateral consequences, such as disqualifications, are simply in my conversations with my client. But it's just to make sure my client understands. There are certain circumstances where I have put it on the record, but I would say it's very rare that I think I've seen other attorneys put it on the record. But I know, at least in our office, we talk to all of the attorneys, quite frankly, do. And we just recently had somebody enter a plea knowing full well that they were going to be looking at a disqualification because the benefit of the plea was far outweighed the disqualification.
And that kind of goes towards that informed decision. Like if you're going to make the decision, you need to know what's on the table.
And that's what I always tell my clients is it's my job to give them the information. It's their life. They're the one that has to live with the consequences. And so it's their job to have that information to make the informed decision.
So my friend Taylor, who I have a request in to come speak at the next meeting, like her attorney, and he was an expensive attorney, asked the family, like, you know, what is the goal of, she got into a domestic with her dad in the front yard, and like, you know, what is your goal? And like she didn't want to go to jail. Like that was what she said. And he got her off with no jail time, but it was second-degree assault. And now, I mean, she's still very young, 28 maybe. And like, it's really impacting her now. And so I asked her if she'd come and speak. And she's the one that spoke to get the bill passed to do this task force. But it's like not always what lawyers do. And especially public defenders, like do they have time to do that? Do you know what I mean? And so Yeah. In a perfect
Well, and
world, done.
And I think to piggyback on that though, like a public defender, and I forget who made the comment, but they're not involved in trying to do a set aside or to follow through on the disqualification. They're just no longer involved, that they would not have that experience. And I think even same thing on the prosecutor side. They don't, I mean, even because the disqualifications don't go through the county, so they don't even necessarily have the experience with it either. I mean, there have been times where I'm bringing to the prosecutor saying, you know, your plea offers, here is the disqualifications that can happen, and it's not even on the prosecutor's radar. And so I think it just, because it's a separate part and a separate collateral consequence, it's just not on most radars.
I asked a public defender once, and I'm not public defender bashing at all. I love public defenders, but I asked a public defender once, you know, how he dealt with collateral consequences, and he kind of shrugged his shoulders, said, "I'm trying to keep people out of prison. I really don't have time for that." And I'm not judging that right or wrong, but it was, I thought, an interesting statement. Like, wow. Yeah.
Reality is someone going to prison actually oftentimes that impacts what we're talking about less, because they're out of prison, then no probation, the time starts quicker for these timeframes that we're talking about a lot of times, right? And so, you know, with the probation caps, it's a little better now, but you know, you're talking about if you don't go to prison, it's 5, 10, 15, 20 years of probation. And so like sometimes going to prison starts the clock faster for stuff like expungement, pardons, and these timeframes around 245C15. And so, and that's hard.
Agreed. Open it up one last time. Anybody have any other thoughts before we take this month off and do work in our subcommittees? Anybody else? Okay, with that, I want to thank everybody for ongoing dedication to this work. It's always great to get together and meet and hear from somebody as fantastic as Dewan. And we will see you all in a month. And as always, be safe and have a good summertime here.
Thank you.